I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. 1 year ago, tragedy struck a Queens parish. Now the congregation is rising from the ashes.
We are sorry at the loss of our church, but we come together in hope because we have recently heard from Bishop DiMarzio that we can rebuild our church.
Plus, how much do you know about Halloween? I'll talk to a man who hit the streets in search of some answers to questions about the origins of the spookiest day of the year. And it's a film you would not necessarily expect to see in a church, but a local parish looks at the spirituality of The Exorcist.
If it had dealt with the conflict of the priests, I think it would have been a more religious film. I think they went in for a lot of special effects and so on, and that weakened it as a religious film, but it's very entertaining.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It was a year ago that fire ripped through the Church of St. Mary Magdalene in Springfield Gardens, Queens. It's one of the oldest parishes in the Brooklyn Diocese to minister to African Americans and Caribbean Americans. Fire destroyed the interior of the church, forcing that parish to hold their masses in the gymnasium of the nearby Martin DePorres School. And although the fire may have shuttered their church building, the flames did nothing to dash the spirits of the parishioners who commemorated the 1-year anniversary of the tragic fire this past Friday with a special ceremony.
I got a call basically saying, "You're not going to believe this, but our church is on fire."
It was very heartbreaking to know that the building that we worship in was no longer here.
The church is on fire, and I said, "I'll go right down." And she says, "No, you'll feel too bad about it. Don't go down."
We just started crying. We had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't do anything. It was scary.
Loving God, we stand here tonight remembering the fire of 1 year ago that destroyed our beloved church building.
We're celebrating in prayer, in music, in ritual, in dance, who we are as church. We come together in our times of joy. We come together in our times of sorrow. And tonight is a little bit of both. We are sorry at the loss of our church, but we come together in hope because we have recently heard from Bishop DiMarzio that we can rebuild our church, and we've just begun a capital campaign. We have seen the Lord to do that, and so tonight we really celebrate that also, the hope we have in building our new church.
For all those who were inconvenienced, who had to change their schedules, and who put in numerous hours of work so that we might have a place to worship on Sunday mornings.
It has been a difficult year because of not having a permanent space. We use a gym.
It affected us deeply because we felt displaced. We had to adjust to a different environment in the school gym. The Christian brothers were really gracious and helpful in that process, but it still wasn't home.
Many of us who stood out here on this exact spot exactly 1 year ago tonight may have felt like Mary Magdalene. In fact, I remember people asking me that night, "Sister, will they close the parish? Is this the end for us?" Do you remember that?
A lot of people, including myself, was a little scared that they may just close the parish down since it burned. There was no reason to rebuild it.
This is the only parish I've ever been in other than military service in World War II.
I knew that God would be with us, and if he wasn't, well, I knew he was going to be with us. I knew the church would be rebuilt, just we needed to wait and have patience.
For this past year, the appearance of our church has changed. Some, because it no longer looked familiar, chose to worship elsewhere. But for the majority of us, we have come to understand what it really means to be church.
People have really understood that it's really the community and the relationships in this community and the ability to come together to worship and pray together, support each other, that really make the church. And that the building, although we need a building, is not the heart of who we are.
And all the best to them as they seek to rebuild. Well, stay with us. There's more Currents coming up. Another deadly attack against a Coptic Christian, but you might not believe what caused this one. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, a movie that hopefully won't make your head spin. First, though, let's have a look at today's headlines. A Coptic Christian teen in Egypt is dead after his teacher and classmates allegedly beat him for refusing to cover up his tattoo of a cross. The Assyrian International News Agency reports the teacher asked the 17-year-old boy to cover up the tattoo. The boy refused and opened his shirt to reveal a cross around his neck. The boy's parents say the teacher then began beating their son, and classmates joined in. Police have arrested 2 students and an investigation is ongoing. 1 year after a bloody massacre at the Catholic Cathedral in Baghdad, mourners remembered the 42 victims as martyrs during Mass in Rome today. Reports say attendees asked for the victims' intercession on behalf of Iraq's Christian community. It was 1 year ago that 5 Islamic militants entered Our Lady of Salvation Cathedral in Baghdad and opened fire. Well, the U.S. Commission on International Freedom will cease to exist on November 18th unless the Senate reauthorizes it, and U.S. bishops are urging the senators to do just that. The commission monitors religious freedom around the world and reports on persecutions and human rights violations. Bishop Howard Hubbard of the Bishops' Committee on International Justice and Peace says ongoing attacks on Christians and other religious minorities means the world needs to pay closer attention to religious freedom. Hubbard said recent attacks on Christians in Egypt, Nigeria, and Iraq are grim reminders of what is at stake. Well, turning now to London, where it's the second resignation in less than a week at St. Paul's Anglican Cathedral. The Dean of St. Paul's announced he is stepping down, saying his position became, quote, untenable following the cathedral's handling of Occupy London protesters. Last week, the cathedral's chancellor stepped down after St. Paul's announced it may take legal action to remove the protesters from church property. Well, back in this country, GOP presidential hopeful Herman Cain was again answering questions about his position on abortion over the weekend. On CBS's Face the Nation, Cain was asked where he stands.
Okay, so in other words, you would not even believe in abortion if rape, incest, or the health of the mother was involved.
That's my position.
Well, questions over Cain's stance on the issue first arose during a recent interview with CNN when Cain said the government should not tell women what to do in the case of rape. Today, Cain also answered questions about decades-old allegations of sexual harassment. 2 female employees of National Restaurant Association accused Cain of inappropriate behavior when Cain led the organization back in the 1990s. Cain told Fox News he was falsely accused, and he said he has, quote, never sexually harassed anyone. Well, the Supreme Court has refused to hear a case involving roadside crosses on government property. The decision allows a lower court ruling to stand in which said that crosses on Utah roads intended to commemorate fallen state troopers violated the separation of church and state. Justice Clarence Thomas dissented, saying the Supreme Court rejected an opportunity to provide clarity on the Establishment Clause to the Constitution. Well, the troubled Legionaries of Christ have begun making payments now to victims of sexual abuse at the hands of the Legion's founder. Reports say the Legionaries will pay more than $20,000 to at least 4 victims of the late Father Marcial Maciel. An investigation revealed that Maciel had abused seminarians, fathered at least 3 children, and was a drug addict. A Christian university in Georgia is in the news now over an employment agreement that may be a little more common than you think. Michael Buchner caught up with the school's president.
I reject as acceptable all sexual activity not in agreement with the Bible, including but not limited to premarital sex, adultery, and homosexuality.
That statement is now at the center of a college controversy at Shorter University.
Well, our goal is not to offend people. Our goal is to declare who we are.
The Board of Trustees at the private Christian college now mandating that all employees, more than 200 of them, adhere to and sign a personal lifestyle statement which rejects premarital sex, adultery, and homosexuality. President Don Dallas tells me failure to sign this statement could result in an employee being terminated from the college.
Do you believe that an employee who is homosexual should lose their job if they choose not to sign this?
I think that anybody who adheres to a lifestyle that is outside of what the biblical mandate is and of what the board has passed, including the president, would not be allowed to continue here.
We took the personal lifestyle statement to campus and showed it to students.
I can see where they're coming from.
This sophomore, who didn't want to be identified, says making employees sign the statement is discrimination.
Who is one person to judge whatever somebody else does? I mean, it's none of their business.
The president tells me the practice of making employees sign the lifestyle statement is common at other Christian universities. And he says since Shorter doesn't receive federal funding, it's perfectly legal.
These are biblical positions.
That is Michael Butchner reporting in Atlanta. Well, closer to home, Conan O'Brien is back in town for 1 week, and while he is in New York, he will officiate a same-sex wedding. According to New York Magazine's Vulture blog, O'Brien will officiate at the wedding of one of his longtime staffers during the taping of his show at Manhattan's Beacon Theater this week. Producers have not said when that ceremony will air. And it is time for the Bishop of Fort Worth to pay up after his Texas Rangers lost the deciding Game 7 of the World Series to the St. Louis Cardinals. Fort Worth Bishop Kevin Vann has agreed to send St. Louis Archbishop Robert Carlson some Texas barbecue and a Stetson cowboy hat. Now, as part of the wager, St. Louis's Catholic Charities will also receive $10 for every run scored in the series. Well, congratulations there to the St. Louis Cardinals and, of course, the Archdiocese of St. Louis as well. Stay with us. There's more Currents coming up. When we return, where did Halloween begin? Is it really a satanic celebration? We'll get the answers to those questions and more next. Welcome back. Well, the leftover snow on the ground from this weekend's freak nor'easter might say Christmas, but all the ghouls and goblins decorating the front lawns and plastic pumpkins filled with candy can only be saying one thing. Halloween, of course. But how much do you know about America's annual Spook Fest and its roots? Busted Halo's Father Jack Collins of You Don't Know Jack fame took to the streets of the village, which in just a little while here will be filled with costumed Halloween revelers, to find out just how much the average Joe and Jane know about Halloween.
Do you know how Halloween began?
No, I don't.
Not exactly. The ancient Celts thought that the veil between this world and the other world was at its thinnest, and people from the other side could come over. So they tried to ward off these spirits in case they were going to do them harm by lighting fires and jack-o'-lanterns and this, that, and the other thing.
All right, so do you think you'd know the answers to Father Jack's questions? Well, maybe you're feeling frightful about not knowing what it is you're celebrating today and exactly why. Well, have no fear, because the man with all of the answers, Father Jack Collins, joined me by phone earlier today. Well, Father Jack Collins, thanks so much for joining me here on Currents. Really appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Matt. It's an honor to be on. And as I think I mentioned to you before we came on the air, the shows that you put on through the Brooklyn Diocese are really, really good. I've watched any number of them and want to take my hat off to you, and also feel really good about being on the station.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it very much. And of course, we look very highly upon you at Busted Halo and all the work that you do. I mean, you do some great work there as well. And as part of that, you have this web series called You Don't Know Jack, as your name is Father Jack Collins. So yeah. It's a very name that's sort of very apropos. And one thing that I like that you've done here recently is, of course, this video about Halloween and the origins of it. And as you said at one point in the video, and me being a fan of cheesy humor, I loved this. Was it You Don't Know Jack O'Lantern? I thought that was great. But
Thank you, Matt.
And then, of course, there was a little sound cue in there, wah 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 wah, you know, which was great. But no, what did you find when you went out to the streets and asked people what they knew about the origins of Halloween?
Well, I would say people generally didn't know anything about the origins, although a couple of them were kind of close. But in addition to all that, I have really been surprised at how really cordial people are, how nice they are. I do dress as a priest. They do see my Roman collar. And if they don't want to, participate in the interview, all they do is walk on. But no one has, been rude or anything but really nice. People really want to have their say and have it recorded. And so it's been a very positive experience, very positive. Some people came very close to the meaning of Halloween.
Well, and it looked like you were having a lot of fun out there and getting some very interesting answers. So what is the real answer to where did Halloween begin?
I have no idea, Matt. I make all this stuff up. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Make it up as we go along.
According to Celtic tradition, on October 31st, or around this time of the year, the gap between the world that is beyond us and our world is the gap is closest. The separation between this world and the next is very, very thin. And the idea was that we would wear masks to disguise ourselves so that if people from the other world wanted to come back to exact some kind of revenge or to work some kind of mischief, that we would not be easily identified. Wow. So that's kind of the origins. And they, the ancient Celts, they built, big, huge bonfires, and I think they probably made noise and all sorts of things to kind of ward off whatever may be coming from the other side that might do them harm.
Wow. And I mean, this is a holiday that's obviously gotten sort of maybe a bad rap, I don't know, over the years as something that may be satanic in nature or evil in nature as just a holiday in and of itself. Is that true? Is that the case at all?
Oh, no. I mean, I know that kind of overtone has been laid on it by, I guess people genuinely and truly convinced that it is something that it is never was, really, and certainly not intended to be. It was just the other world. And interestingly enough, for me anyway, where we seem to kind of say in our culture, there's nothing beyond what you see. This is it. This is certainly a doorway into another world and maybe the beginning of a way of having a discussion with people. Gosh, if you believe in ghosts, we believe in saints. If you believe in another world, so do we. And we think at the heart of the other world is a loving presence whom we call God, who has spoken to us in Jesus from this other world and continues to live among us through the Spirit that God has sent us, and that Spirit is the Spirit of love. So it's a way maybe of kind of evangelizing a little, being kind of, light-handed about it, but, to acknowledge, if you want, that there is another world, that Halloween is a way of affirming that there's more to the eye than we see here. Seems to me something we could build on as, disciples of Jesus, as Christian people.
All right, more to life than meets the eye.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
A gateway to evangelization. That's very cool.
That we start there. Here is, a world. We're kind of affirming it. Gosh, we do too. We use some religious vocabulary to affirm it. We might call it heaven, and we certainly call the people who have gone on before us, as we will celebrate, in 2 days after Halloween. Or one day, actually, the people who have gone on before us as saints, those who are acknowledged publicly as such, in the church. And then the day after, we celebrate All Souls, and that's kind of everybody else that doesn't fit in on November 1st. That All Souls, these are the people who go on, and that they are benevolent toward us. Yeah. They look after us, like God.
And that's something that we can all take comfort in as well as we move through these days. Well, Father, we're just out of time here, but wanted to thank you for coming on and talking to us about this. And best of luck with everything that goes on there at Busted Halo in this video series. I mean, this is great, and we'll look forward to having you on again, maybe in talking about other topics that you take to the streets to try to get answers to.
Matt, it was just great. Really wonderful talking to you. God bless all the good work you guys do out in Brooklyn.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Father Jack Collins with Busted Halo. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Great to have him on. Well, stay with us. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, it's the stuff nightmares are made of. A local parish screens one of the most frightening films of all time.
One has to look very carefully at these phenomena and to respect the judgment of people who have really dealt with this stuff.
Well, finally tonight, be prepared to be scared. For the past couple of weeks, the Immaculate Conception Parish in Astoria, Queens has been exploring evil on the silver screen with their fall film festival, appropriately titled The Force of Evil. Well, what better way now to close out a cinematic treatment of all things evil and set the mood for Halloween, the proper mood for Halloween that is, than by watching the 1973 classic, The Exorcist. Yeah. Based on William Peter Blatty's fright-inducing novel, The Exorcist, with its iconic scenes of demonic possession, has solidified its status as a film classic. And last Friday, it served as a lesson on what the Catholic faith teaches about the supernatural.
This film festival was on the whole subject of evil. Today's film is about the supernatural. There's like a thin curtain between the seen and the unseen world. And we have to approach with humility to realize that sure, we can say a lot about the seen world, but we can only posit in faith what the unseen world is. And so when there's an eruption from the unseen world, whether of goodness in the miracle or of evil in a possession, it really calls people's attention to the fact that there are evil forces other than human beings that affect the world and people in it.
We walked by the other day and I saw the ad outside. I said, this looks fantastic.
They have a lot of movie events here. I've come to several of them. Seen Father Lauder speak here a few times. It's always pretty interesting and challenging.
I watched it the other day. I mean, I would say I went under the covers maybe 3 times. Don't try to leave. We have locked the doors.
I think it's very entertaining, I think it's very exciting, and I think potentially it could be a great religious film. If it had dealt with the conflict of the priests, I think it would have been a more religious film. I think they went in for a lot of special effects and so on, and that weakened it as a religious film, but it's very entertaining.
I've seen this movie several times, and it always scares me. To this day, I would say it's the scariest movie I've ever seen.
I saw it when I was 10 years old, and it scared me. And every time anyone asked me, oh, you want to see The Exorcist? I'm like, no, it's okay.
The more I watch this movie, and I have seen it a number of times, I'm less and less interested in the character of Reagan and more interested in Father Karras.
In this really beautiful act of sacrifice, he says to the demon, leave her and enter me. At least part of the story is based on a 1940s case of a boy who seemed to be possessed, not a Catholic, and then the Lutheran minister tried to do something and apparently nothing happened. Then the Catholic priest did something and apparently an exorcism took place. And I'm sure Bill Blatty did a lot of research. How much is completely accurate, I don't know.
There are some things that are not explained by science. Some things that can't be explained and verified in any way. I've known a number of exorcists who have done exorcisms, and they're all uniformly some really fine, level-headed, intelligent, modern people. And because of that, I think one has to look very carefully at these phenomena and to respect the judgment of people who have really dealt with this stuff.
I thought it stayed close to the theology, close to what Catholicism teaches about exorcism, but they're making a movie, so they probably, we could put it this way, they put everything that they'd ever heard about an exorcism into this one exorcism.
The universe is much vaster, more complex than we ever thought of. So the fact that there would be an unseen world of great complexity and both goodness and malice, to me, makes more sense than to say that we're the only people in the whole universe.
You know, it was showing how powerful religion is and spirituality is.
It challenges my faith and it says, well, you have to be aware of this and conscious of it.
And I've certainly never seen it in a Catholic church, so that was even more interesting, I thought. I loved it. I think it's a great motion picture.
A great motion picture, an extremely scary motion picture. And I have to say, too, this weekend I watched a movie that's kind of similar. It deals with demonic possession, Paranormal Activity, the first one. I'm still kind of freaked out. I watched it like Saturday night, and I am still just kind of freaked out. I'm in a weird mood because of that film. And The Exorcist is another one of those. It just kind of makes you feel creepy after you watch it. But anyway, I guess it's a perfect mood for a Halloween night. Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, local students want to be part of that number and get a lesson on the saints, which makes sense considering tomorrow is All Saints Day. Yes, the day after Halloween. Until then, be sure and visit us online. We're over at currentsny.net on the World Wide Web. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. And whether you're trick-or-treating, stay safe out there and have a great night.